Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm supposed to be interviewing Dave Brown. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to join us. I hope he is. At the moment, he has not arrived. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a background on what the show is about, who he is, what's going on in Newberg, Oregon with the school board, and we'll take it from there. If he comes, great. If not, I'm going to be asking you all to please support him in his fight against a recall. But before we get started, as usual, a little housekeeping. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I am your host, Deb Philman. This is a channel where we talk about all things related to American education in crisis right now, as I'm sure you know, unless you've been living under a rock, possibly under the polar ice cape or something. Good morning, Tati. So is it still morning? It is still morning, actually. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. It does help me get the word out and, YouTube. So sometimes subscribers get unsubscribed without asking to be. So also check your subscription. Make sure you are still subscribed if you mean to be. It would also help if you like this video, share this video. We can get more of an audience to hear what's going on in Newberg. And also consider joining my locals community. What I do in my locals is dive a little deeper into some of these educational issues. I post articles, the community posts video and articles. If you're a member of the community, a supporter, you can join me on a Zoom call. I have one today, in fact, right after this broadcast. And we can get into things like how to homeschool your kids if that's what you want to do, whether you should homeschool your kids. We can talk about whether it's a good fit for you and how to go about getting started. So I provide all of that to my supporting members. In any event, thank you all for being here. Let's get started. So while we wait for Dave, what I'm going to do is read you the backgrounder that was given to me about this situation. It's pretty remarkable. So the Newberg, Oregon School District has been having some struggles with critical race theory in the classroom. And in August of 2021, 4 of the 7 school board members bravely took a stance against all things political in the classrooms. Something we who watch this channel, support this channel, and my efforts all agree with. We just don't want the politics in the classroom. You're free to hold your own views, but not tell them to our kids. And that includes BLM and LGBTQ signage, paraphernalia, political discussions, and activism, unless they were directly related to an educational lesson. So there wasn't a ban on speech. This was not a speech infringement. And by the way, as I've said many times, teachers do not have unlimited free speech in the classroom. They don't in any setting. Period. They're an employee, just like you or I. If you go to your job, you're not allowed to just spout off whatever the heck you want because free speech. That is a space where they have a say in what you say. And because they are public employees, it's even more important for them to remain apolitical because it's all Americans represented in that classroom, right? They're constantly telling us we need representation of all Americans. That includes points of view. So the teachers who are in a position of power over the students, and the students know it and everybody knows it, really ought to be neutral, because there's no way to undo that power dynamic. They ought to know it. They're big on power dynamics. Anyway, continuing on. So the purpose in creating the policy, the school board policy, was to put education first and create a neutral learning environment where all children are treated equally. Teachers and staff have refused to implement this policy. How cheeky of them, right? Also insubordinate, but I digress. Some have even attempted to remove the American flag from the classroom, stating it is the most political flag there is. Really interesting. You are paid with tax dollars, conscripted away from the citizens of your city, of your town, of your state, of the nation, if you take federal dollars, which we know you do. So guess what? Guess what? You don't get to have that opinion. You don't get to decide that you're taking down the American flag. You just don't. If you want to do that, go work in a private school or start your own private school where you could be as anti-American as you want. But no, you don't get to do that. It is not the most political flag. I'm pretty sure there are a few others that are more political, like the BLM flag. Yeah, I think that's pretty political. Anyhow, the 4 board members have been attacked and harassed every day since by a group of people, many of whom are not even from Yamhill County. I'm shocked. Since this policy was passed, we have had AOC visit these people in Newberg. We have had Hollywood celebrities donating money to an effort to recall 2 of the school board members. We have the media portraying these 4 board members as racist, homophobic, white supremacists. We have elected leaders as well as members of the Oregon Department of Education joining their movement, publicly voicing their opinions about the 4 board members and even engaging in gathering signatures for the recall effort. So, next time somebody says there shouldn't be outside money coming to Loudoun County, Virginia to support the governor's election and blah, blah, it's not fair. They don't even work there. They don't even live there. They don't even go to school there. They don't have students in the district. It's so mean and unfair. And we want to do it. Who perfected the art of bringing in outside money to bully people? And a school board is supposed to reflect the town, the city. Okay. So next time we send a bunch of Texas money or Mississippi money or South Carolina money up to New York City, let me know. But this happens all the time. Okay. We believe there is an organized effort. I don't think you need to believe that. I think it's fact. There's an organized effort to radicalize, sexualize, and recruit our children by a socialist progressive movement that aims to turn them against America. I think that's well documented at this point. We have seen an unnatural number of children from the Newburgh School District come out as gay or trans, mostly young girls, in the last few years. I actually think the movement, the gender movement, is anti-gay. I think what they're trying to do is trans the gay away, personally, but that's a whole other topic. Please allow me to iterate that in no way do we stand against or discriminate against children who are members of the LGBTQ community. We believe all children should be loved and included, and we strongly stand against any form of bullying or discrimination. We are seeing a movement that appears to be accelerating at an unnatural rate. To give you an example, there's a link to a video. I can put it in the comments from the sex education curriculum called My Future, My Choice. This is part of the sex ed curriculum approved by the Oregon Department of Education and is currently shown to 7th graders. We'll take a look at that if he doesn't manage to join us. I'll be happy to go through it. We are a grassroots group of people who are taking a stand against this movement. Since doing so, we have learned that we are standing against a nationally run group with an organized socialist and anti-American agenda called indivisible.org. Go look that up. The local chapter of indivisible.org is called Progressive Yamhill. They seem very anti-progress to me. I hate that they have taken the word progressive. Not that I ever was a progressive, but it just has the word progress in it. And I don't really see this as moving forward. I see this as moving backward. But again, I digress. This organization is behind the recalls happening in Yamhill County, all targeted at elected officials that don't agree with their agenda. We believe that what is happening in Newburgh is happening all over the country. These organizations are sending their activists into board seats so they can take over the conservative voice and replace it with their progressive voice. Right now, the Newburgh School Board is funding the recall cause. They're officially recalling the school board chair, Dave Brown. Who's supposed to be joining us, and school board vice chair Brian Shannon. We have a short time to fight this before the ballots are sent out. They're being mailed out December 27th. If they're successful at recalling these 2 conservative school board members, all of the hard work that has been done to preserve education, stand for the Constitution, and keep political activism out of the classroom will fall to the wayside. These 4 board members, Dave Brown, Brian Shannon, Trevor DeHart, and Renee Powell, have endured daily harassment and doxing over the last 4 months. This doxing has resulted in the loss of jobs. Liberal lies have cost friendships. Their privacy is under constant infringement while their safety is threatened. They have received death threats. Their family members have received threats. They've had to pull their kids out of school. They're currently balancing multiple lawsuits. Yet they stand firm in their stance to protect our children from this progressive agenda. Today, the school board has the Oregon Department of Education, the Oregon Teachers Union, and the ACLU, as well as several national media sources coming against them hard. An important detail to note, Guadalupe Martinez, the vice chair of the Oregon State Board of Education, walked through Newburgh collecting signatures for the recall of Dave Brown and Brian Shannon. If the progressives succeed in recalling these 2 school board members, it will be their example to the rest of the country of what happens when we Americans take a stand against their agenda. And there are a list of articles. I can put those in the show notes after the show. Wow. So I'm not surprised, of course. I talk a lot on this channel about how the current progressive movement, the Marxist iteration of it, operates. They are bullies. They are fascists, and yet they project. They put that out there like, you're the bully, you're the fascist, you won't validate my existence. No, you're the bully. Because these are public schools. Public schools cater to everyone, and that means all points of view. Yes, yours is included, but so is ours. And more importantly, the rights of the parent to educate their own children in values and morals and politics is sacrosanct. That is not your right as a public school. You can choose a curriculum that meets the state standards. The state standards, while presumed to be democratically defined because elected officials define them, is no longer presumed such. Why is that? Because there are too many political operatives at the tippy top and the very bottom who are influencing those elections. The teachers' unions, curriculum developers who make a lot of money off taxpayer dollars. So by the time you get into the voting booth, by the time you mail in your ballot, by the time you have your say, it's already been decided by very powerful people who are playing with your money, and it's done. It's not even on the ballot. They don't even tell you half of what is going on, so you can't make an informed decision. So this notion that it's presumed democratic, you elected the people who decided these things. Interesting. Yes, we did. But guess what? They lied to us, and then they didn't show us what they were choosing or what the incentives were that were given to them to influence their choices, because their incentive wasn't our vote. It wasn't to get our vote. Because if it was, they would have told us. They would have said, do you want this kind of sex ed in your classrooms? Everyone? Because we're thinking about doing this. We're thinking about putting this in front of the kids. We're thinking about popularizing and normalizing these kinds of things. We're thinking about not telling you if your child wants to transition. We're actually considering keeping that a secret as part of policy. Are you guys on board with that? No, they didn't do that, did they? They didn't come to us and ask. They didn't say, we're going to empower our teachers to take down the American flag if they don't like it, if it offends their delicate sensibilities. We're going to empower the Zinification of American history instruction. You guys okay with that? Because I have news for you. It's a minority of Americans who are okay with that. They're just very loud and very well funded by extremely powerful interests, many of which are foreign, who have an interest in seeing the United States fail. This is not conjecture. This is not conspiracy theory. This is well documented at this point. And what we have in Dave Brown and his fellow school board members, Brian Shannon, and let me make sure I get everybody's name because they're all important. They are all brave and taking a stance here. So we've got Dave Brown, Brian Shannon, and who else? There were other names. I'm going to Trevor DeHart and Renee Powell. These people are actually standing up for every child's right. Every child has a right to make his or her own decision about politics, no matter who their parents are. So if my kids go to school and learn about American history and come out of it at the end and think America's a terrible place all by themselves without any other influence, I guess I'm going to have to live with that. But that's not even, that opportunity is being stolen from them. Just as much as it would be if they went to school and there were a bunch of people telling them America's the very best place it ever was. All other countries suck. And we should really just take over the world and, eliminate all other cultures. That would be stealing their right to make their own decision too. That is exactly what it would be doing. So, someone is calling me from Beaverton, Oregon. I'm going to take it just in case. Hold on. Hello? Yes, I'm on the air. Are you trying to get on with us?
I am. My person Rose here is trying hard, but have trouble with Chrome.
Yeah, you open Chrome and you click the link. It's not working?
No.
All right, I will send another link and maybe, should work. Where can I send it to?
You want my email address?
Yeah, hang on a sec. Sorry, audience. I'm doing this live. So what I did do is I shared your I read the backgrounder. So everybody is up to speed and we're just waiting for you. Okay, go ahead with your email address.
DB.
Mhm.
ART.
Mhm.
LEADS@gmail.com.
Are you behind a paywall or anything? Like, are you in a private organization? Okay. Because sometimes they will block this kind of stuff. All right, I just sent it. Take a look, see if you can open that one.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay, hope to see you soon. Okay, bye. All right, we're trying to get Dave on the air. I know it's crazy, right? But this is what you do, just kind of roll with the punches. All right, so where was I? Yeah, this is organized. It's not democratically decided. You parents are not. Did you see that? And I know a lot of people write to me and they say parents don't pay attention. They don't come to the conferences and they don't do that. I'm sorry to use that voice. I get criticized for that. I'm sorry. They'll say parents aren't paying attention. They're not coming to conferences. They're not, dialed into what's going on. It's their fault if they weren't paying attention. And I reject that for two reasons. One, it paints all parents with the same brush. Yes, of course, there are negligent parents who are not paying any attention at all to anything involved with their kids. We'll stipulate that. However, they are not the majority. They're just not the majority. The majority of parents are hardworking people. Most are dual income households or single parents, just doing the best they can to get through the day. They put their faith in the institution of public school because A, they're told they can. They're told they can. You don't see politicians standing up and telling them, be wary, don't trust, except possibly every so often the occasional Republican will say that. But even Republicans will say, our precious public schools that we have to protect and preserve with all that we are. We don't hear a lot of criticism. They'll say like, oh, the teachers union, but they don't actually criticize the whole apparatus, which really at this point is itself just one big progressive Marxist killing machine, idea killing machine. And it's a giant money laundering operation, probably for both parties. But you don't see a lot of criticism. You don't see Republican politicians with a policy other than school choice, school choice, school choice. Well, that's nice, but why? And to what for what purpose? And they'll always preface it with, there are many wonderful teachers and we love our teachers and our teachers are so amazing. So there you are, trusting the institution, trusting the people that you're electing on both sides to be honest with you about what's going on and where the money is going. Most of them don't even know, especially on the right. They're not paying attention. They're just becoming aware. They're like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Like it's brand new. No, this has been going on for decades. They've been asleep at the wheel too. So I don't fault parents. It's literally not their job to know this. It is the job of elected officials. It is the job of people at the Board of Education. It is the job of the teachers. And as public servants, it is their job to be transparent and communicate with us. And then after they've done that, they can show we did look, we showed you, here it all is. Here's all the receipts, here are the documents, here it was in your face 24/7, and you ignored it and did nothing. Then maybe you can blame parents. But when we know they're going, don't tell the parents, call it something else. Let's put out a PowerPoint deck just on the inside with the teachers unions and the teacher ed to make sure that we have like a new vocabulary so that they don't know what we're really calling it. Don't call it critical race theory. Call it something else. What should we call it? Oh, I know, culturally relevant pedagogy. Okay, we got to make it all about race and racism so they won't know what we're really doing. Is dismantling the patriarchy and the hierarchy and the capitalist structure. Blah blah. Whatever. We know now. We've seen your secret little things and your supposedly secret trainings. Now you're not even hiding it anymore. You're just sticking it on YouTube and going, hey, will they find it? Maybe they'll find it. And then thumbing your noses when we do. But don't sit there and pretend that this was transparent all along. That is a lie. And don't blame parents for trusting an institution they were told was sacred. And it's a great equalizer. Public education is so wonderful. We don't dare cut a single red cent from their budget, even though we've been spending more and more and more and more every single year with worse and worse results. And they never take responsibility. When's the last time you saw Randy Weingarten step up and say, wow, we failed? Yeah. So we tried this thing. Yeah. And it didn't work and we totally failed and we're really sorry. And for all those millions of children who can't read properly, sorry we fought any changes all this time. We kind of screwed up. We thought we were doing a good job, but we really failed. When's the last time you heard anything along those lines? It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's everybody's fault but us. Always. Always and forever. So they're blaming parents as a deflection. Why should they blame themselves? Are the kids in our home 8 hours of the day? No. And they would say, well, they spend most of their time at home. Yes, asleep. Asleep is where they spend most of their time. 8 hours a day, they're not in our care. They are in the care of the state. And then in the summer, very often, they're in the care of a state summer camp or a daycare or something else. And why would that be? Why do we have to have a 2-income household? Oh, right. The cost of living goes higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And why is that? And why have our raises not kept pace with that? Oh, but teachers have. Teachers get raises at a rate way beyond the private sector. Way. We're lucky we get that 3% cost of living increase every 2 years. Never mind every year. We don't get it balanced out against the rest of the nation like teachers do. We don't look at some national average to decide our salary in the private sector. It doesn't work like that. But it works that way for teachers. And then they want to say like, well, it's the parents' fault. And I understand maybe why high school teachers feel that way at that point, because by the time the kids get to high school, it's too late for the teachers. The well-meaning teachers, the good teachers, it's like, the kid doesn't pay attention, the kid can't read. Obviously, that's not the high school teacher's fault. That's the fault of K through 5. But K through 5 is where the majority of this toxicity is. It's also increasingly in middle schools and high schools, but it's mostly down there. There is no reason whatsoever that K through 5 teachers shouldn't be on strike against their own union, on strike against the way they're teaching reading. They should be able to use their eyes and their ears to see what they're doing is failing. If they care at all about children, they should be the ones protesting alongside us by the thousands, not the random dozen. And that's what we have. Brave K through 5 teachers who are alone, terrified. They're like, I don't think this isn't right. And they get nowhere. They get nowhere. They get doxxed, they get fired, or they just quit. And then as you get up in age with the higher grades where they feel like, now I get to teach them history. You're not really doing that much of that in K through 5, are you? That's where they're so deep into identity and SEL and K through 5 because they need to make them receptive to the crazy ideas they're going to hear up above. But it didn't start there. It starts when they're little because if they can't read, they can't fight you. They can't argue. They have nothing. You can't even at home as a parent, you can't fight it. So stop blaming the parents. I am despairing of Dave ever being able to get in here. I sent him the link. They're having troubles with Chrome. But so let's take a look at some of these comments here. Let's see. What do we have here? Loudoun County School Board unanimously voted to keep the controversial porn books. I think this is now. I see a lot of corporate media complaining about banning books. Guys, it is not banning a book to not teach it in a school or have it in a school library. Is it banning books to not include Hustler in the magazine choices in the K through 12 library? Is that a book ban when we say we don't want that there? Is it a book ban to not include pick something, pick some kind of literature that has explicit sex scenes in it, okay? Or pictures. Would we call it a ban to not have it there? And then if you're told, well, these are written for children. And so what? Lots of people write lots of things for children. It doesn't make them appropriate. It doesn't make them developmentally appropriate. It doesn't make them desirable to have in a public school, classroom, or library. We used to be able to say this stuff, like unapologetically. We used to be able to say, you know what? I really don't want my 6-year-old walking through the library for resource center time past books that are graphic novels that depict sex, oral sex at that. I don't want that. I don't want my child's innocence stolen from them. I want them to arrive at adolescence where, if people say, well, they sneak around and they find it anyway. So be it. Then they snuck. But I don't want other adults going, this is normal. This is totally fine. You should want this and you should obsess over it. Here, look at it. It's really healthy. That is so radically different in terms of the development of a child than I kind of have to sneak to look at this because I'm kind of curious. Somewhere in that process, the child knows I'm probably not supposed to be looking at this. And that is powerful. That is powerful. They might still do it, but they don't have the approval of the adults and they know it. And that matters. That matters. They go, oh, well, that makes it dirty and bad. Maybe they should hesitate. Maybe they're not ready emotionally and psychologically from some of the stuff that's depicted in there. Maybe it needs to be dirty, for lack of a better word. That doesn't make it objectively dirty for all time. We used to understand that. We used to be mature adults who understood the difference between what was not okay when you're a kid, but perfectly healthy in, an adult relationship, a consenting adult relationship. These things are different. It's like you could say, smoking pot if you're an adult and that's what you want to do. And, it's your body and so forth. Have at it. Right. But do you want your 7-year-old smoking pot? No, you don't. Do you want your 7-year-old drinking Jim Beam? No, you probably don't. You'd call that horrible. If somebody goes, here, it's alcohol. Adults do it. You should too. It's healthy. It tastes good. It's, you'll feel good about life if you have a little buzz. I mean, really? There are plenty of things we do as adults that we do because we're adults, because we allegedly or supposedly have the maturity to understand delayed gratification, limiting things so we don't overindulge, et cetera, and so forth. Not to mention understanding the consequences of our actions, short and long term. Kids don't have that ability because the brains aren't developed yet. So this idea that it's healthy, which is everything that's healthy for adults, is totally healthy to show to kids as long as you make it in cutesy little cartoon pictures. No, it's not. So it's not book banning. It's returning things to it's returning things to their rightful place is what I would say, where they ought to be. So I just got a note from the folks who are helping Dave. And what they're saying is that he's really having trouble. Okay, so we may have to reschedule with Dave. But I still think this was worthwhile. And the reason I say that is I wanted you guys to have the background on what's going on in Newburgh, Oregon, because as they said, the 27th, these ballots go out. So if you live there, if you know someone who lives there, if you know someone nearby, if you can help in any way, since we know they're getting outside help from all over the country, all's fair, right? Do anything and everything you can to help these people. Please. They are being very brave to do what they're doing. What they're enduring is not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart. And I say that because I'm not doing 1/10 of what they're doing in terms of being on the front lines. I'm here in my cozy, my environment and saying what I'm saying, and people can listen or not, they can tune out, but I'm not literally getting attacked every day like they are. And it's still exhausting. It's exhausting just to be in this space, to be, dealing with this stuff, to sit there and wonder, like, what happened? Like, when did we go as a society go off the rails? I mean, I know the answer to the question, so please, you don't need to tell me. It's just a rhetorical question. And I, I really want us to stop apologizing about holding these views as an individual. If you're watching this right now, if you're listening to this, and you are tempted either to conceal your real views on these topics with your friends or family or just people your neighbors, or to couch them in terms like, well, I don't really know, and maybe they have a point, and or there are really good teachers, and there's this and there's that. If you feel the need to put out 10 different disclaimers before you open your mouth, please stop. Really, you don't need to do that, because it ought to go without saying that not every teacher is horrible. You don't need to pat them on the back and give them a gold star for being the good teacher in a sea of bad teachers. And the reason I say that is we don't do that with the police, do we? I mean, we really don't. We'll say there's a bad apple in your precinct and it's bringing it down for everybody. And if you stand by and you know that there's a bad apple there and you don't say something and you don't do anything, and especially if you're the commissioner or you're the chief or you're in charge or you're the watch commander or whatever you are, and you've got a bad apple over there who's just not doing the things they're supposed to do. They're giving police in general a bad name, and you support that person because they're a police officer and we got to stand together. You're guilty. You're guilty. And I say the same thing to teachers. I'm sorry, I do. If you know that your fellow teachers are ripping down the American flag and standing in the classroom and telling a captive audience of minor children to question their parents' teaching about the sex they are, to question whether their parents' views on the country are good, and actually to tell them to lie to their parents and hide things from their parents, and we won't tell that your pronouns have changed. We'll keep it a secret. That's grooming 101. If you know that that's going on a classroom away or down the hall and you don't say anything, you are just as bad. And we would say the same thing to somebody watching child abuse of any other kind. If you know it's happening and you stay silent, you're like, I'm in my classroom. I'm not doing it. I'm just keep my nose clean. I just got to keep my job, keep my pension, keep it. Sorry. At this point in history, you're accountable. You don't get a free pass. You're not a great teacher because you're just not doing it that much in your classroom or whatever. You're just like quietly not doing it. No, a great teacher is Frank McCormick or Ramona Bessinger. That's a great teacher. A great teacher is one who goes, I will not stand by in this building while abuse is happening, period. I will not let school board members who are brave, like Dave Brown et al., be hung out to dry. I will stand by them side by side and fight for education, apolitical education. I will fight for true freedom of speech. Freedom of speech isn't we get to have porn in the library. Freedom of speech is we get to say we don't want porn in the library. We want a diversity of views that are healthy for our children and age appropriate for our children. And you don't dox us for saying so. You don't fire people for saying so. But that's what's happening. You don't get to have your own views in the public school. So, let's see if there's anything else. Yeah. Remember when they only wanted to get married? Very true, and I'm chuckling because, humor is helpful at a time like this. However, what I will say is, as I said at the outset, I believe that the trans activist movement is actually anti-gay. And the reason I say that is that I have seen lesbians attacked, like absolutely attacked, viciously attacked, by autogynephiles who enter female spaces and behave just like misogynistic men, because that's what they are. Doesn't matter what what costume they put on or what turns them on. They are invading those spaces. And when they go into schools, when these activists go into schools, they are telling a tomboyish girl or a somewhat more effeminate boy that they're trans. Not that they're pre-gay, not that they're, just to like go ahead and be yourself, however you actually are right now, that you're a girl who likes to sort of be more masculine on the outside or wear boys' clothes, whatever. No, no. They're not accepting them as they are, as possibly a future gay individual. They're telling them they're broken. They were born in the wrong body. That is anti-gay. That's anti-gay. If in order to be who you are, you have to actually transition to a completely different body, that's not really being supportive of gay rights. That's saying you need to mutilate yourself to be okay. That's messed up. True transsexuals are quite rare, and there is a difference. And there you can go learn about them on a few channels on YouTube, and they do exist and they deserve our love and respect and compassion. But that's not who's doing this. That is not who's going into the schools and pushing this agenda. Okay? That's not who it is at all. They're anti-gay. Let's see what we have here. We have conservative voices warned us in the 1950s, then again in the 60s, then again in the 70s, etc. Yes, true. Not only conservative voices, in fact. I've covered on this channel quite a lot that Ayn Rand warned us as far back as, well, the late 40s, we know, but very specifically about education in 1970. She wrote The Comperchicos, and if you read it, it gives you chills. 1970. That's a lot of years ago. So this has been going on a long time. And under the guise of progressivism. So, it's not progress. It's anti-progress. It's anti-concepts pushed by anti-progressives on unsuspecting young children and their parents. And at this point, too, let's remember that parents who are under the age of 40 attended the same schools with the same ideas. Howard Zinn's history has been in the schools since the early 90s. So these people are parents now. They often don't know any different. They might, not agree with the Howard Zinn version of history, and they might not agree with some of the things going on, but they're probably very self-conscious about their lack of agreement. They're not solid. They don't remember an America where we love the country, where the majority of people loved the country, where the majority of people had a realistic view of it. We weren't perfect, but loved the country, left and right alike. In other words, Democrats and Republicans alike basically loved the country. They don't remember America that way at all. They don't have any recollection of that. Thankfully, I do. I'm very glad that I do, because it keeps me going every day. That place once existed, and it still was imperfect. I'd go back to before the income tax, but that's me. But there are other people who'd go back at least to, they'd be like, oh, can we go back to Reagan? I'd go back way farther. I'd go back to Calvin Coolidge. I'd go back even before that. And you say, why would you keep slavery? You keep Jim Crow? No, I just go back there and improve the things that we now know were wrong, but I wouldn't need the income tax to do it. And I wouldn't implement Brown v. Board of Education the way they did and arrive at the decision the way they arrived at it. I wouldn't justify it the way they did. Go back and study that. There are a lot of things that we did in the name of progress that set us up to be here right now. So there are there are things we've been told for a long, long time, and whoever didn't listen. But I maintain that it's not that we didn't listen. It's that the people who really wanted communism, Marxism, to take hold in the United States, who hated the American ideal, who hated what we stood for, the idea of America, were just better funded and more powerful and more insidious than we ever thought. We're an optimistic people. We're always looking forward. We tend not to look behind us. And I think it caught up with us. I think we didn't look over our shoulders enough. And sometimes your goal of acceptance and openness and tolerating everything and it's, all this freedom. I'm not speaking against freedom. I'm just saying that the people who were solid on what classical liberal values were took their eye off the ball in terms of advocating for them, in terms of saying, yes, we're liberal and we want to hear all points of view, but we are going to tell you why that point of view is not good for this country every chance we get. We're not just going to let ideas hang in the ether like they're all equal and they're all equally valuable. That's what we did wrong. That's what we did wrong. We said the heterodoxy is a universal good just to exist. And we forgot that in order to preserve individual liberty, you need to be vigilant. The other half of that equation is vigilance. Does this idea support individual liberty? No, it doesn't. I'm going to say so. Not just me, lone voice in the wilderness, but I'm going to say so. And everybody else who has a voice who thinks so is going to say so too. We're going to do it loudly. We're going to do it often. And bad ideas are not going to take hold. Not on our watch. We didn't do that. It was, live, let live, whatever. Everything's awesome. Everybody's equally great. It was only a matter of time before the people willing to do that for their side's ideas won. It's not that their ideas are better or even more popular. It's that they get more airtime and they're getting more defense constantly. And nobody was speaking up for the other side. It was like, oh, it's just implied. We just, individual liberty is awesome. Everybody knows that. No, they don't. They obviously don't, because we wouldn't have this fight. So here we are. All right. Well, I'm going to probably reschedule with Dave and we will do a second show to hear from him and hear what he's going through. But as I said, please support what's going on. I mean, support them. Don't support the recall. And if you are in your state pushing for, new school board members or trying to support more conservative school board members, and I use the term conservative loosely. What I really mean is, anti-woke school board members, people who are pro-neutrality, pro-classical liberalism, whatever, the true heterodoxy of ideas. Please bear this in mind. So yes, support them, but be on your guard for this kind of thing. Support them in ways that they don't have to defend these kind of recalls. Be alert to the outside money coming in and call it out when you see it. Call it out right away. Call out teachers individually. Call this out. They don't get to do this unilaterally. They don't get to sit there and go, you and you and you are racist. Bad. I'm not calling for anyone to be doxxed. Don't hear me say that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if your child's teacher or if your child's school is doing this, stand up and call it out by name and say, you're doing this. Stop. Stop doing it. Don't let them hide behind the classroom door. Don't let them, go scurrying off like little rats to their union and go, protect me. No, they don't have they don't have unlimited freedom of speech. When they step inside that classroom, they are hired speech, hired by you, the taxpayers. What's it going to take? A taxpayer revolt? Is it going to take us like somehow refusing to pay our taxes to stop this? I don't even know if we can anymore. And by the way, that's the other thing that the state is moving towards. When they want to assault the gig economy, when they want to put us all, in like electronic everything, electronic surveillance, electronic everything is done electronically, electronic banking. And that's why they do things like, hey, we're not going to allow you to bank with us anymore. I mean, this is the kind of bullying that's going on so that you can't effectively not pay your taxes. You can't have a taxpayer revolt. How could you? Your employer's paying it for you. You can't tell them not to. They can't say no. There's a lot of can't going on in America right now. It's not just that our kids can't say, I disagree with this in class. Oh, and by the way, they can. They can if they know how to read and if they were able to form an independent idea at all, which increasingly they're not, because you can't form concepts if you can't conceptualize. You can't conceptualize if you have no vocabulary. You don't have a vocabulary if you don't read, and you can't read if the school didn't teach you to read. And that's what's happening. So all you can do is repeat like a parrot. This is what is. And that's what you're up against, mom and dad. That's what you're up against. So if you're thinking, I'll supplement at home, with what? With what? They gonna read it? I challenge you right now. Go hand your kid, your high school kid, the Federalist Papers and say, go here, read this. I want to read this and discuss it with you. They're gonna be like, whatever. They're not gonna do it. They don't have any incentive to do it. They fit in just fine with what's going on in the school, and they're not asked to do anything that rigorous. They probably couldn't understand it if they read it anyway. They'd be like, this is the old stuff. This is old words written by old white people. I don't need to read this. And that's even in good families. Unless your kid was literally not educated in the public school, you're likely to hear that. So you might think, well, I have an honor student and they're very polite and they read this and read that. Okay, fine. Have they read this stuff? What are their points of view? Do you know? Ask them. Ask them. There's woke political ideas and there's woke social and psychological ideas. You could have a kid who's like, oh, I love America. America's great, but don't stress me out, mom. It's so stressful. It's your fault. It's their fault, their fault, their fault, their fault. Everybody's fault. Don't make me do stuff. I have to like move out, but I'm only 27. Okay. That's a woke psychological idea. They might be voting right along with you, but what difference does it make if they blame you for the slightest hint of stress, turmoil in their lives? So there are other things that are being taught in school besides woke political ideas. They're teaching your kids to be fragile, very, very fragile. And you need to get between them and that too. And that's, I think, probably one of the things that the school board members are attuned to. And that's another thing they don't want. The union doesn't want. The teachers don't want. The powers behind all of this don't want. So, all right. I think you read that stuff for fun. Exactly. I read that read or read. I'm not sure if it was past tense, but yeah, it's me too. Me too. Oh, and you also made this important point. Non-political people would be classified as conservative, most likely. It's true. It's true. I participated in a thread yesterday on Twitter. No, it was today. My days bleed together on Twitter. And the thread was titled, "What's your most right-wing opinion?" And I had to read, right? I had to participate. And it actually perked me up because of how many responses. And I'm reading like, these are not right-wing opinions at all. These aren't, but it's sad because they are today. They're right-wing opinions today. I shudder to think what the actual right-wing is, right? Because I mean, if my contribution was, no one is born in the wrong body. No one is born in the wrong body. You might have gender dysphoria, and the treatment for your gender dysphoria might end up being transitioning. That might be a decision you make as an adult someday, that's the best form of treatment for what ails you, and that might make you feel comfortable and happy. Okay, but that doesn't mean you were literally born broken. That's not what that means. And that's what we're teaching kids. If you feel uncomfortable in your own skin, it's because you were born in the wrong body. That is, I don't believe that. But now that's a right-wing viewpoint. So King Copycat says, I'm 27 and far from woke. That's awesome. Glad to hear it. Curious to know how many of your friends are in the same boat with you? Like, do you find it easy to make friends or meet people who think like you, or do you find it more difficult? Because I am finding it increasingly difficult, even in my own age group, mid-50s, to find people who share my views, or at least will admit it openly. If they do, they're hiding it. They're hiding it well. I mean, I can go online and I can, I know how to find people, but just walking around or meeting people in person, no, it's very hard. I wouldn't open my mouth publicly with a lot of these views. I mean, I would, but what I'm saying is they probably don't. All right, let's see. Anything else that I might have missed? Yeah, this is true. People don't know how to be adults. Some of this reminds me of Lord of the Flies meets Neverland. Yes. There is actually an expression called forever children, where a lot of these people are teachers now. A lot of these people entered the profession of teaching because they only feel comfortable around children. And they only feel comfortable around children because they don't want to adult. They don't want to have to be on an equal footing with the people in their daily life. They like that power dynamic. Probably if you looked back in their lives, you would find that they were either, possibly bullied in school, or maybe they were bullies in school, or the only place they really felt good about themselves was in the school setting, they found their niche, and the Comparchicos talks about this. They learned how to play that game and be successful in that environment, and that's the only environment like it. It's also why they're trying to replicate that environment into other things. So you'll see people get very cliquey and tribal when they move into sort of corporations that are larger than, 10 people or something. And they try to reestablish a beachhead in the corporation where they rally their little troops and form their little cliques, and you start feeling like it's high school all over again in your company. That's why. Because the typical corporate environment doesn't mirror the school. It just doesn't support that, because the bottom line is what's important, and individual achievement to contribute to that bottom line is what's important. So if they want to work in that field, they feel like they have to recreate that environment because that's where they felt comfortable. And that's going to happen more and more and more as these graduates come out, and then they go to college where it's reinforced some more, and they step out into the world. And you're going to find some middle-aged and older middle managers being like, what happened? What's going on? Beset by these groups of people in their corporation who are essentially bullying HR or bullying the upper tier of management to do their bidding. And they're going to have to get tough. They're going to have to either fire a whole bunch of people all at once or cave. Those are going to be their two choices. And we've seen over the last year who's done what. There are plenty of companies that have been like, okay. And I don't think that's going to bode well for them over the long term. But that's just me. And it says, Giorgio says, let's make children mature enough not to coddle and turn away childlike teachers. Yes, but we first have to call out the childlike teachers. We have to say what they really are. They're not just people with a different opinion. Let's be clear. They have a different agenda. There's a big difference between a person who says, well, I want your child to be successful and learn their skills and make their own decisions. I just happen to disagree with you about the country or whatever. And a person who goes, you're a terrible parent, and I consider it abuse if your children grow up with your views. So I'm going to take them in my classroom and teach them the opposite of your views and how you're a bad person. And I'm proud of that. It's a very, very different kind of teacher. Okay. And just because they're not all taking to TikTok to announce it doesn't mean there aren't way more people doing it. What I say is, if teachers are starting to appear on TikTok unapologetically talking about, how they wear stilettos into class, and, they have a full beard, but they also wear makeup, and they want to spend their entire class period talking about queerness or whiteness or whatever. If they're coming out in the daylight, it's kind of like roaches. It's like roaches. If you see the roaches, scampering across your countertop in the middle of the day, you've got an infestation. That's not the random roach. You've got a problem in your walls that would give you nightmares, like creep show level nightmares. If you saw creep show, you know what I'm talking about. And then what is this? Melanie says there's a book called The Peter Pan Syndrome about why so many men are holding onto their childhoods, and the Lost Boy Syndrome. I wonder if many of them are AGPs or if it's just in general. I really wonder. I wonder about so many things having to do with gender in our society. Like, where did this suddenly come from? It's very strange. Like Talking to All says their full agenda was read into the congressional record, but they still act like it's a conspiracy theory. That is very true. It's all out in the open. I sit here and talk about it on this channel, and people will say like, oh, I can't believe you said that. It's like so conspiracy. So Alex Jones of you. And I'm like, I'm behind the curve, guys. I'm way behind the curve. If you think this is conspiratorial, way behind. Almost everything I've said today, I can go find a link to a credible source with firsthand where the people I'm talking about are announcing this. So it's not conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy theory if it's real, if it's proven out by what they say. They're not ashamed. And so my point to you is neither should you be. Neither should you be. So let's see. Anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to get going, but I thank you all so much for coming today. We will get back on with Dave. I will make sure. In fact, I'm going to also change the graphic that heads up this video. So if you're going to share it out, and I hope that you will, I will put a different thumbnail so it's kind of clear what the video ended up being. Because I still want people to get this information in advance of the recall, just in case we don't get it rescheduled in time. It is the week before Christmas. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing this out with other people, other parents. I think it applies everywhere at this point, given what we've just talked about. But in particular in Oregon, they have some really big problems in their public schools, and their kids are innocent. They're innocent. I can't turn a blind eye just because they live in Oregon. Okay? They didn't decide to be born there. They didn't decide to be stuck with those schools. And it's not fair. I think it's stealing their birthright as free citizens of a free republic to proselytize a kind of cult-like religion to them in the public classroom. I really do. I think it's theft. Anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget subscribe to the channel. Thank you.